Hi, my name is Cheree Ashley, and I am here in studio today with the Ideal Hour. I'm here to share a little bit about my story, talk all things business, growth, family, all the things. Pleasure to be here.
What's up, everybody? This is Simon. On this episode of the Ideal Hour, I have a very special guest, Cheree Ashley. She is the CEO of Bright Future Recovery. It is a rehab facility, and we're going to get into everything from being a business owner to recovery to how people get caught in drugs or alcohol and how they can get out and better themselves. Cheree, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you taking the long drive. I hear you are quite a distance away, but it's my pleasure having you here.
Thanks, Simon. I appreciate it. Pleasure to be here.
Most definitely. All right. So tell me, not every day I see a young individual like yourself. You own 3 rehab facilities, is what I understood. Is that correct?
I have 2.
2. Okay, 2 rehab. Okay, sorry, I must have misread.
2 locations.
But that's still good. And what got you into rehab? Like, why rehab? What got you in? Give me a little bit of a background.
So I am in recovery myself.
Okay.
Just celebrated 12 years.
Wow, congrats.
So thank you. I was fortunate enough to be able to go through a program at a young age and catch my addiction younger. I was in my early 20s, and I really was motivated and driven through my process, and people that were, just a day ahead of me in their recovery, and the ones who were a year ahead of me. I was really inspired by it and everything that they were doing for myself and everybody that I was in treatment with. And so I quickly decided after that that's something I wanted to scope out and look into. And so I started working in the field.
Okay.
It's kind of how it started.
At a recovery place?
Okay. At the program that I went to.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did a training program there and stayed on for about a year.
Oh, wow. Okay. And that was, do you want to share what you were recovering from? It's totally up to you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, It's so funny because when I went through the process, it was one of those things where it's like, don't tell anybody,
Okay, yeah.
Don't,
That's like a negative
told my
stigma.
family, like, don't tell everyone I'm at school or I'm at college or something, let's not tell them I'm in rehab. So my drug of choice was heroin.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it's crazy because I don't want to fast forward too much, but now working in the field for over a decade, and now seeing today how serious fentanyl is, like that word wasn't non-existent when I went to treatment, and back then heroin was a scary word. It was like, oh my gosh, heroin, like that's the hardcore stuff. And today I can honestly say, thank God I was able to recover from just heroin.
Wow.
I am so thankful that I was not in the fentanyl era, because I don't know if I would have made it,
It's that much more potent and that much more
Yes.
lethal.
Yes, it's a whole other monster that we're dealing with. Yeah.
Do they, well, first of all, thank you for sharing. And I think the problem is people don't address it. Like, I also grew up in a family, if something bad happens, don't tell your neighbors, don't tell your friends. It's like embarrassing or whatever.
Right.
But that doesn't get treatment. That doesn't help you. It's kind of burying it. So I'm glad you came out of that. Let's talk about heroin a little bit. Is it is it that much more deadlier? And do people lace it nowadays? Like, someone may think they're doing heroin, but could they do fentanyl? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing it in everything. I mean, I have these young kids come in for treatment, and they got caught with, what they think is oxy, and they're calling us, and they're like, their parents are calling us, and we're putting them in treatment. We found these blue pills in their room, and they're using oxy, and they need to go get help right now. And they come in, and the first thing we do is a drug test, and they're negative for opiates and positive for fentanyl.
Wow.
So they're using these pills that they think they're using something completely different.
Like
they
a
have
painkiller.
they have no idea that they're using pure fentanyl.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And there's just so much in my mind that is going with that. It's a very serious situation. When someone's doing fentanyl or heroin, maybe you could describe why they want to continue it. Obviously, it's addicting, but to someone like me, I can't comprehend it because I've never tried it.
Right.
What does it make people feel, or why do you think they go into these drugs?
Which I feel is like a really good question, right? Because through my recovery now, like I love sobriety. Like I couldn't even imagine taking anything to alter my mindset. Like I couldn't even imagine feeling lethargic and tired or nodding off or, fuzzy or hungover. Any of those things are just so not appealing to me today. So I can put myself in your position now to know like why or how do you feel? Because it's not that I forget how I felt. It's just been so long, and I'm thankful for that. But I definitely feel it is more along the lines of addiction, right? It's some people start using stuff for fun. Some may be using it because of an injury or because, me personally, I was going through a really hard breakup and it was, okay, try a Norco. And that Norco was numbing the feelings that I was experiencing at that time. So I was like, okay, take another. And then you quickly build a tolerance. Your body builds a tolerance just like it does to anything, right? If you take something consistently enough, your body needs more of it to feel the way it did the first time.
Sure.
So not only does it start taking a mental toll on you, but physically. I mean, it only takes about a week to 2 weeks for your body to become physically dependent on prescription pills, which I feel like even aside from somebody who's using street drugs, if you're taking prescription pills and you're having, a bottle that says 48 and 2 refills. I mean, they're taking it as prescribed. They have no idea. The doctor's not like, here's this prescription, but beware that if you refill it and refill it again, you may need to be checking into rehab because now your body is physically dependent.
Used to it,
right?
independent.
And you go through
Actually
severe.
Needs it, not even
absolutely.
Used to it. Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like it got to a point where I was just chasing the high to feel well. I wasn't even getting loaded off of it anymore. I was just trying to survive each day without going into severe withdrawals and being extremely ill and sick and, having the sweats and the restless leg syndrome and the insomnia and all the things that come along with it. It's like the flu on steroids,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not even so much I would say that the feeling feels good, but you're replacing all those natural endorphins that we get through regular things in life, and it's replacing it. So now your body's dependent on that.
So what led you to start? It sounds like you broke up. So maybe once you broke up, you felt like this individual, you need them in your life, and you coped with it by using drugs or using whatever you were using. Do you feel like when an individual or a young adult has a good support system at home, they're less likely to try it? Or are you seeing like a person that lives in Atherton, California, also on it? They're like drugs have no distinction between rich, poor, doesn't matter.
It doesn't. I've done a few interventions in Atherton.
Oh, wow.
So it doesn't even matter, And I think that I feel luckily it's changing a little bit nowadays. Now that there's a lot of people are speaking out on it. There's podcasts, there's videos. Like this is all new, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have this when I was an addict. I didn't know how to go find a story on somebody who was addicted to heroin. Otherwise, I probably would have been zoned in just going down a rabbit hole watching all these stories, and who knows where my mind would have shifted. I don't know.
It was kind of like underground, don't talk about it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what rehab was.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's that? Like,
crazy.
What does it cost? Like, I had no idea. Yeah. And I come from a middle-class family where, I was raised around no addiction, no substance abuse, no bad childhood trauma, nothing.
Yeah.
I had an absent father, but it wasn't anything that was pressing to me at that time as a kid,
Yeah. That wasn't the reason.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I feel, back to your question, is like it could affect anybody. I really just think it comes down to the tools that individual has or does not have, not so much what their family system looks like. I mean, and that could definitely have an impact. If they have parents who are alcoholics, they may be a little bit more prone to drinking at a younger age, or seeing that that's how you tolerate or cope or deal with certain things. But that doesn't mean that somebody who wasn't raised, such as myself, and that is safe from it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know anything about drugs or addiction. So I wasn't educated when I took that first pill. I had no idea what I was taking. No. I trusted the person that I was working with that I saw every single day who was functioning just fine to me, I'm like, why not? You know, he seems fine. I'm sure I'll be fine.
And it just takes that one time. It seems like someone you just trust, and you may know them for a long time, and all of a sudden they're doing it. They're going to get you on it. They may have a benefit for doing it. That's crazy. And I do have a little bit of an understanding with addiction. Not many people know. I don't share this often, but my mother is an alcoholic. So I grew up in that like environment of a mean alcoholic, right? I feel like alcoholics, there's two types. There's one that's really happy and bubbly and they can have a good time and it's not a problem. And then there's one that just goes off the hinges.
Right.
So I had that, and that was scary, and it's just probably just as bad as some of the other drugs. I just don't think they deteriorate you as fast.
Right. Well, if anything, to be honest with you, now working on the professional side of this, alcohol is actually probably the worst one.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me why.
So opiates is altering one's mindset where there's a constant chase, right? Mm-hmm. You become a professional scam artist, I say, and a master manipulator.
Okay.
With most addicts, right? They're really good liars and they're able to manipulate. But, you know, most opiate addicts can wake up completely broke every single day and still figure out a way to get
hustle
high.
to get more money.
Totally.
For it.
They're hustling on a whole other level, right?
They're like in the wild, and they'll get their prey. So
totally. Absolutely. And that was me every day. I'd be like, it's okay. I'll figure it out tomorrow.
Wow.
And I did. I did that for years.
That's crazy.
And, you know, so you tend to catch yourself getting in bad situations where now you're stealing, now you're robbing people, you're doing things that you wouldn't do normally. And with that comes a lot of legal consequences or, you know, you getting robbed if you're a drug dealer or whatnot. But and it can take you quickly because such a small dose is so potent that it can be a quick overdose. Yeah. And that part's very, very scary. And
you don't care at that point.
No,
I think when you're taking it, you don't
think
even
you're
think
safe
about it.
from it.
Yeah, you're like, I can handle it.
That's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember attending funerals of somebody who overdosed and sitting there and feeling sad for that person, but it still wasn't even a wake-up call for me.
Wow.
You know?
Just like it just happened.
You're just so numb
It's almost like you're a soldier. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like it's meant to happen, so to speak, right?
Right.
Like it's like,
well, they weren't cautious enough, or they weren't.
You excused it.
Yeah, totally. Like, well, it won't happen to me because I'm smarter than they were with how I use, which is just a sick mentality.
Complete BS because you don't know the dose.
Right.
Yeah.
And then now we're dealing with alcohol, and it's scary because alcohol is so sociably acceptable. I mean, they advertise it as being this beautiful, fun thing that everybody should participate in. I mean, think about it. How many people, if you go to a bar or you go to a, you know, event or a party or whatever, and you're not drinking, it's like people are looking at you like, why aren't you drinking?
Yeah.
I'm not drinking, but why?
Yeah.
You know, and
they
it's like
judge you almost.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's like the one substance where you're weird if you don't.
I've been judged many times.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just simply am not. And I have so many clients like ask, what do I say? Well, I tell them, you either just say you're not drinking if you don't feel comfortable saying you're in recovery from alcohol or you're an alcoholic. Some people get to that point, but some people fresh in the recovery don't want to go down that whole storyline.
It's so tough to be a woman and do that. Like for me, I'm like, fuck off, you know, or like, hey, I got to wake up early, leave me alone, you know, or
totally.
And it's like guys are like, whatever, they'll bust your balls, so to speak, but they won't. Women are just a little bit more deeper into it. Like, why is she not? Is she pregnant? Is she this?
Is she pregnant is the first question. Totally.
You know, it's like, what the hell?
I mean, and even businessmen too, where all their meetings revolve around going and having wine.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like they don't want to, it's hard because I see so many men, especially successful businesmen who
That's true.
don't want to feel like they have to show a sign of weakness by saying I can't because I'm an alcoholic. By saying that they are admitting to other people that they lost control over something themselves. They should have been able to control. Men have that pride where it's harder to be able to express that to other men who are able to control the drinking.
Absolutely correct.
So it gets a little tricky. And I think what's really hard with alcoholism is that on the outside, the appearance looks okay, but what it's doing internally to somebody's body
No, it's
is
killing
not
them.
totally. And, cirrhosis of the liver and
That's what my mother had.
pancreatitis, I mean, jaundice, all of those things. And then the craziest thing till this day that I see is someone comes in and they'll say it's just alcohol. And their blood pressure is through the roof. And they had no idea that if they tried to quit cold turkey without going into a medication-assisted detox program where they're monitored 24/7, they actually could have a seizure and that can kill them. And it happens all the time.
Wow.
So, it's really scary, and it's important that we educate society, especially, kids that go out and they're partying and then they're trying this because, they're drinking or, whatever the situation might be. All we can do is talk about it more, educate people more.
I think you're absolutely right. And just getting back to the men, see, I'm my own boss, so I could kind of do that and tell people like, hey, back off. But I could see how a man who's even masculine, let's say, because today's masculinity is different than it was 10 years ago.
Right.
But a masculine man may not want to deny his boss a drink or feel uncomfortable because it's his job's on the line.
Right.
Right. And it's like, it's such a different pressure. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
So I agree. So it does go both ways. So we talked about how you kind of got into drug use, which thank you for sharing. And how did you get out? What was your final turning point? What was rock bottom for you?
I had started getting into some legal consequences. And back then, drug charges, especially opiates, was a felony, which I'm very thankful for because I feel like if that was still the case today, there would be so many more people getting the help that they need with not just getting a slap on the wrist because it's a misdemeanor and, okay, do probation or do community service or
it's like
whatever.
A slap on the wrist.
Right. It was me. It was like, okay, you mess up, you violate probation, you're getting another charge, and you get so many charges where now you're facing prison time. And like prison was no place for me. I was terrified of that, And so I had, the last straw was I had went to a baby shower and I got arrested right after the baby shower, was pulled over.
Okay.
And my mom actually had called on me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, which I'm so thankful that she did.
Right,
She was terrified to tell me that forever. And I'm like, why? That saved my life, you know? And so I went to jail. I had no bail. So I was in there 5 days too long is what I say. I felt like a lifetime. And I had the opportunity to go to treatment after that. And I was like, absolutely, get me out of this place. Take me wherever. I don't care where I'm going. And it was a really hard process. I mean, it was definitely the hardest process I've ever had to go through, but it was the most rewarding.
How long did treatment take for you?
7 months.
Wow, that's a long time. That's a dedication.
Long time. Yeah, it was not easy.
So rehab for you, was it a facility or?
Yes, residential program.
Okay.
So I was there for 7 months, which was necessary and needed to completely unplug and learn about myself, and I was ashamed for my family to tell anybody where I was or what I was doing. And now we joke and say for the longest time we told people Cheree was away at school, which technically I was. I was at school for myself.
Educating your own mind.
My own mind of how to have different coping skills and handle chaos and environments and all of those things that put me in that situation and how I can make sure that I'm not ever put in that situation again.
That's wonderful. And Cheree, so this kind of led you to, open up Bright Future Recovery.
Yes.
And that's amazing. So not only are you now a business owner, you're 12 years clean and you're helping others. Let's talk about Bright Future Recovery a little bit, or even facilities like that. Are they accessible easily by individuals? Is there not enough of them compared to how much drug use is out there? I mean, I have a condo in San Francisco where it's on 7th and 8th and Mission Street, which that area.
Yes, very
well. It used to be very clean. I used to walk my dog there.
Right. Right.
Didn't feel like I was going to get robbed or shot or run into anybody that is, maybe an addict. Now it's a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of people. Like every time I
Oh,
drive
yeah.
through there, I go, wow, there's like 100 people.
Oh,
Some of
there's
them might be dead.
thousands down there. Yeah. I mean, it's like one huge party down there for them.
It's
Crazy.
insane. And it's being allowed. It's being allowed on the federal property. It's being allowed off, and it sucks for the residents.
Yeah.
There's no help for them, I think. So I don't know.
No.
It's a completely different thing. So is there enough rehab facilities for the amount of people, or is this...
So here's the hard thing is California is an at-will state. We can't hold anybody against their will unless they are in a psychiatric facility locked down on a 5150 or 5250 hold that is put on by either law enforcement or the hospital.
Okay.
And to qualify somebody for that hold is extremely difficult.
Okay.
There are a lot of resources, but we run into a lot of challenges nowadays where a lot of people are insurance dependent and they're counting on their insurance to cover our programs because treatment's not cheap. I mean, the cost of staff has gone up tremendously over the past decade of what people are getting paid, and we're competing with hospital pay for our nurses, and insurance is requiring that you have nurses on staff, and we have psychiatrists and doctors and therapists, and so running a facility is not cheap. So the cost of your daily treatment is not cheap.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, depending on their insurance, come in, and then we're running into issues that insurance is not wanting them to be there. So they're
because they
only
don't want to pay.
Exactly.
And then you're dealing with insurance as well, which doesn't want to pay. So you're fighting them to get the
fighting
payment.
them, and they're only wanting to authorize somebody 10 days, at most 28 days. And I'm like, their mind is barely clearing up from the withdrawal symptoms at that time. How are you trying to say that they're already ready to go back into society?
Yeah, and that a little amount of time. I mean, it took you 7 months.
Exactly. I wish treatment was still that length of time now. I mean, now we have step-down programs where they can do outpatient and whatnot, but it's really challenging. And then we are up against the government, who is, in my professional opinion, completely enabling these addicts.
For sure.
I mean, they're, I can speak on behalf of my younger brother, who was one who was down there off of mission and hustling down there for his addiction on fentanyl. And this kid had so much stuff when he went in there with nothing. I mean, I'm talking e-bikes and scooters and name brand jackets and all these things. And he was living in a hotel for free with a nicer bathroom than I have in my house.
Crazy.
It's
crazy.
All because the government
is... It's a big business for them. I think a lot of people I've had very interesting guests on the podcast, and a lot of them say the government's always involved in some way or another.
I looked into it. The hotel he was staying at, they shut down from being a private hotel for guests to visit the city to getting paid $14 million a year from the government. I'm like, well, no wonder. No wonder these hotels are shutting down, because it's guaranteed money just to house these addicts.
Yeah, they don't care.
No.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I think it's and what's happened even downtown San Francisco is just, it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's a joke down there. It's
like,
awful.
who wants to go there? It used to be one of the most beautiful cities.
I know.
Now I have kids. I don't even want to.
You don't want to take them. No, my kids will not ever probably see San Francisco because and I had great memories there, but now I have a hard time going down there because, so many loved ones. I go down there and pulled so many out, but how do we, as an interventionist, how do we get them the help that's needed when there's now not many more consequences, when they've become comfortable living there? It's not an uncomfortable place to live for them anymore.
It's become so accepted, even the drug use. I mean, I parked, during the holidays, Union Square, downtown San Francisco.
Right.
I walk out of the garage right by Macy's. There's a guy with a needle hanging in his arm. With my kid, they're like, what's going on here? I'm like, oh my God, this is like, I've never seen that. And I've been in the Bay Area 30 years,
Right.
So it is difficult. Let's talk a little bit more about Bright Future Recovery. You mentioned that it's expensive to run the program. You mentioned that it's expensive to keep the staff. Typically, what does an addict or a recovering addict pay out of private pay, or does it depend on what programs they need?
It does depend on the program. So, like speaking for our program, for example, we have 2 locations. We have one that's more insurance dependent, and we have 12 clients at a time. They're all shared rooms, shared bathrooms, and it's definitely a comfortable environment. It's a home away from home feel. We have great staff. But it's more on a sliding scale. So it can be anywhere from 800 to 1,500 per day.
Okay.
We try to accommodate and work with people as best we can with their finances. And if we're not an appropriate fit, there's always other options.
Okay.
And then we have our boutique style, more amenities offered at our Avila location. And that program's more designed for our high functioning addicts who, might need to be able to access their laptop, check in with work. They're operating large companies,
and there are people that operate large companies.
Absolutely.
And that get into
which is
this.
why we created that program, because we saw the need for it. And of course we open that one and we advertise it and let people know that those programs exist. And then you have the ones who are on Medi-Cal who are like, how dare you advertise a luxury program? You're just for the money. And it's like, there's different
demand.
Of course.
Yeah.
For everybody.
Someone that's a millionaire or more,
Right.
is used to a certain amount of amenities. They're not going to go into a lower end program and feel comfortable.
Or you have a judge,
Yeah.
a judge who needs to go into treatment.
A judge.
Oh yeah. I mean, we see it all.
Wow.
Or a pilot, or
judges are such an interesting concept to me, because they could have a good day or bad day and they control your life with a decision. It's crazy. And they could be on drugs, like you mentioned.
Right. Or alcoholics.
Or alcoholics. And a lot of lawyers are alcoholics.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people who have high stress jobs.
Are.
Yeah, because they go home and they start as a casual, couple drinks every night to unwind from a crazy day, then increase that. And then now, it's the weekend, I'm opening up a bottle at 11 a.m., then they start going down this path and they're calling like, this is too much. I need help. But it's understandable that somebody in that position needs to go to a little bit more of a private setting and not be with somebody who's court appointed because they just violated their probation or parole. So there needs to be two different settings.
Does a judge have to report this to the courts that they're going through a program or not? Or
it just depends on
how deep.
Yeah, it just depends. I mean, some do have the support and this is what's needed, and and some just take a medical leave of absence, which we're HIPAA compliant like a hospital. So we do have a lot of people who are very worried about their jobs who call us, and we let them know that they are protected.
It's privacy. It's
Correct.
HIPAA compliant. That's good. So anybody that needs help, you're HIPAA protected. It's a private matter, but you should get help. Getting back to your two facilities, one is on the luxurious side with more amenities, I would say. I'd call it luxurious. I'm not going to say it's the St. Regis, but, but let's say it's more amenities, right? The other one is more community-based, it sounds like, which is, I think, also very helpful because it's like an intervention at all times. How does someone, let's say, off the street of 7th Street and 8th Street that doesn't have money, their parents, let's say, are non-existent, they're a runaway, and recently I had a Navy SEAL who's fighting child trafficking on the podcast. There's a lot of runaways that do get into drugs, they get back into it. How does someone like that get help? Is, like you mentioned, Medi-Cal or some of the other programs. Let's say you're at the bottom financially. What are the programs for someone like that, or what's their step they should try to do?
What's hard is that there's limited resources for the detox phase. There's a lot of state-funded programs that are great. I've seen great success with like Salvation Army, Teen Challenge, Delancey Streets in San Francisco, but you have to be clean to go in. So you have to detox first.
What's a detox period?
Usually 7 to 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah. So I personally have had a lot of those situations where we will heavily discount our scholarship, a large portion of that cost, to make sure that they can get through the detox phase and set them up with a longer term state-funded program. Sometimes there's scholarships available, and I work with a lot of programs in state and out of state. So if maybe I've utilized our scholarships for the quarter, I definitely am reaching out to other facilities like, hey, do you have a scholarship bed? We have this individual really wanting help. So there's always an option, but it definitely is more of a challenge, unfortunately.
It is, yeah. They're up against a bigger climb, so to speak.
It's hard.
You mentioned your brother earlier. He was also addicted to fentanyl, you said. Is he okay?
He's going through the process of getting better.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we hang on to a lot of hope and prayer that he can overcome it. I mean, he's a good kid, and it's just a scary thing, and it's hard, right? I mean, I'm a counselor. I specialize in this
And
area,
you've been through it.
and I've been through it, and it's hard when you just can't save your own loved one, when you have all the tools and all the resources. So there is a level of them really wanting it more than you want it for them.
Let's talk about that. How does Bright Future Recovery or Avila cope or deal with the parents or the loved ones? Because that's such a big part. I could, and what you just kind of described, I put myself into this on a minimal scale mindset. It's like you just can't reach through to that person. And it feels like what you're saying is not being comprehended, or
Right.
no matter what you do, it's just not enough. It feels like.
Right.
How do you deal with parents or even loved ones, I should say?
Well, we can never give up hope. And I'm also a firm believer that there's always something different that could be tried. So if an intervention has never been performed on an individual who doesn't want help and the family wants to support them through the process of getting help, I strongly encourage them trying that route, because sometimes setting those healthy boundaries that are outlined by a professional coming in and helping is really, really successful. So there's a lot of things to kind of look into and say, have we tried this? Have we tried that? Sometimes it's letting them just hit their rock bottom and not helping them and letting them figure it out on the streets. I mean,
So you have to tell that to
that's
the
a
parent.
harsh reality. Yeah. I mean, and when people, I can't do that. I can't put my loved one out on the street. Trust me when I say it's hard to watch your brother panhandle for $1 to get a cheeseburger off the dollar menu, or beg you, can you please, I'm hungry. Where it's like, well, you're figuring out a way to get high, so you got to figure out a way to eat. That is heartbreaking, to drive away and just burst into tears knowing that that's what you have to do.
It's crazy.
But a lot of those times, it's those boundaries that say, okay, I can't do this anymore. I want help.
You can't be like an enabler
No.
almost, because they're just going to keep doing it.
Right.
And you're saying the person has to hit a point like you've hit, where you said enough is enough. And in your
Right.
case, it was sitting in jail for 5 days,
Yeah.
where you said, hey, I don't belong with these people. There's something better outside for me.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Do parents come in with denial all the time?
All the time.
And then not only that, you probably have to tell them that, hey, this is more serious than it is.
All the time. And then it's our fault.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
get the bad Yelp review and
Yeah.
Google
Oh,
review
gosh.
because they didn't want to listen and we were giving them advice, and now their kids back to using, and it's our fault, and we better sue that program because they didn't do their jobs.
My
So
gosh.
we see it all the time, and it's hard because it really is a whole family dynamic of a disease. Like, it's affecting everybody. It's a domino effect. And I get it, and I feel for them. They're hurt, they're angry, they're scared, they need to blame somebody.
Yeah.
And so we try to educate them. We try to be there of support as much as we can. But as professionals, we have to set our own boundaries. And it took me many, many years to be able
feel
to
that.
do that, because it's hard, when you're coming home and you're trying to deal with your own life issues and chaos, and you're trying to help
Your
someone
kids.
else through their process, and it's 11 o'clock at night and they're calling you in crisis because they just want to vent or cry, but you're also just trying to lay
Live
down
your
with
life
Yeah.
and deal with bills.
It's
and-
hard. It's like you're a dispatcher.
Yeah.
That phone goes off. It's so hard not to answer it because it's crisis.
Yeah,
So
the healthcare industry is like that, and I've seen it across the board where
Right.
you're almost at their attention. You're like a mini hospital in
Right.
some regards.
yeah,
But parents are always in denial, and I do feel like they do blame, and it's like you could only do so much. You could offer this treatment, but like you said earlier, it's up to that individual.
I think that some families and parents also want to blame is because they naturally hold the responsibility and guilt that maybe they've done something wrong. And I always like to reassure loved ones, spouses, parents, siblings, you didn't cause their addiction. But you can definitely figure out ways to support them getting better, because this is a situation that we're in, and nobody was handed a manual that says, hey, this is what you do if your kid or your spouse or your child becomes, an addict. We don't know. It's all through the process. So don't take the responsibility of what did I do wrong, because
don't blame yourself.
You can't,
because it like you said, they could think they're taking an oxy pill. I mean, when I was young and I grew up in the city, so you could imagine I went to city high school and this and that, party, drink, an oxycodone or whatever you call it. Sorry, I've even taken one.
Yeah.
Just at a party, thinking it's just a painkiller. I'm gonna just relax. Now it could be laced, et cetera. I didn't smoke much weed, but it's also, I would imagine, in weed.
Cocaine, all these things that people may casually do.
Yeah.
You can't trust any of that.
Can't trust it anymore.
Nope. And we have to educate our kids, because they...
Can someone slip it in a drink anymore, or that's not possible?
I personally have not heard of that happening. But I'm sure.
It's crazy.
I'm sure they could put powder in somebody's drink.
Crazy.
Absolutely crazy. It's a scary world we live in.
And it's getting worse.
It's getting much worse.
All right, let's talk a little bit about how easy it is to get drugs. Like, you've talked about how easy it is to get on it.
Right.
And I appreciate you sharing your family situation. I think trauma does happen to cause something like, everybody I've talked to, and you have a podcast as well. By the way, what's your podcast name? I apologize, I didn't.
No, that's okay. Hope to Hustle.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we'll link everything below. But how easy it is to get drugs out there, and who is it to blame? Like, I don't think the government's doing enough. I think there's a lot of money being made from it. I recently, as I mentioned earlier, did an episode where now human trafficking is surpassing drugs. So a lot of these people are, they're doubling up. They're trafficking these children or young adults and teens, like a girl in their 15, 14. They're also doing the drug scene. How easy? Like, is it in Atherton? Is it in Los Altos Hills?
Yeah, social media. I'm
That
sorry,
easy.
but I feel we can have social media to blame with the easy. I mean, think about it, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, if somebody wanted to get on a adult site, like, my parents are home, I'm going to get on and check this out. I'm curious. You're like, waiting
so
for the
slow.
internet to
The picture will load too slow.
too slow. And you're like, hurry up,
So these people may not know that happened.
Right. I mean, that's getting on the internet was such a challenge. Then now, oh my gosh. I mean, the access, the fact that we have to go on our children's cell phones and block every site because we are terrified all you have to do is now just voice in a word, even if they don't even know how to spell it yet.
Wow.
They can voice in.
It's crazy. You're
scary.
Right.
So, and then social media with these poor young girls, I feel so bad for girls. And I had just actually talked to somebody about this too, aside from, like the sex trafficking and stuff. But the level of feeling left out, it's so true, because we were talking about it that before social media, you could have a group of friends and two might be going to the mall or going to a movie together and may not have invited the third or fourth friend. And you don't know about it. You see them at school on Monday and it's like, hey, how was your weekend? It was good. Now, you're on social media, you're at home, you weren't invited. Now you see your friends are both posting that they're at the movies. You're instantly feeling left out. So there's all of those things that we're starting to see now with adolescents as well. And the depression is sinking in at a much younger age for things of that sort from social media, which is crazy. It's not because their parents are getting a divorce now. Yeah. It's because they're getting bullied on social media, or they're comparing themselves to this boy that they like and this girl that they're dating, and she's putting all these filters and making herself look different than she is. So there's just so much going on, I feel, for these kids nowadays.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think social media, before you get in a fight with somebody as a man, you wouldn't be recorded and played 1,000 times. You get beat up, you're like, well, whatever, or you get made fun of, and it's not. And now 10, 20, 100 text messages go out. There's apps. So to me, now there's everything for any type of sexual desire out there for apps, dating apps, this and that. I would imagine they probably have some type of weird app that I don't know about to get drugs, or a website to get drugs. Have you seen that before?
Oh yeah, we see people buying drugs on the black market.
Crazy.
and just ordering it and getting it delivered to their. Oh yeah,
like
to the
hard
doorstep.
drugs, not
Oh,
even
yeah.
not even marijuana. Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then kids are selling it through
Snapchat. And
Yeah.
wow. And these companies don't do much about it to stop it because technically,
To my knowledge, no. That there's not a way to censor it. They're taking pictures or putting phone numbers, and then it gets erased after so long. So
oh, you make me scared to raise my daughters.
I know.
That's why. Well, I can't say that, but that's why yeah, it's tough to take in. I think it's really tough knowing what could happen and how quick things spiral downhill.
right. I think the biggest thing we could do is educate our kids, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
I talk to them all the time. I tell them my favorite saying is DTA, don't trust anybody.
yeah.
And I just every morning DTA, DTA. And
Don't,
they're
if you have a headache, don't take that Tylenol.
yeah.
You call us. You go to the nurse's station at school. Like you just any little thing,
Anything. My dad was like that. He would not take a painkiller. He went to a dentist. They pulled a tooth out. He didn't even take the painkiller for that. And I'm like, whoa. And I've been kind of like that. So when I go to the dentist's office or whatever, or I'm in, pain from whatever, I never take any of that stuff.
That's good.
And I remember it was really crazy. We gave birth to our last kid 16, 17 months ago. And when I say we, I wasn't giving birth, even though nowadays they say you can, right? It's like ridiculous. But my wife was in that delivery room, and they're like, "Hey, do you want fentanyl?" And I looked at the nurse, and I'm like, "Huh?" And we didn't respond because I thought I misheard something because that's so like, I was so thrown off. She asked 4 more freaking times. To the point where I'm like, why are you asking about fentanyl? I didn't understand because that wasn't offered 7 years ago when our last kid was born. And then the other nurse, like, hey, she's not having fentanyl. They were pushing fentanyl at birth, which is like, what the F?
Yeah.
And not only does that go into your body, but the baby's body during birth.
Right.
What is the baby being born on? And they're like, oh, it's a painkiller. It's nothing. It's a controlled dose. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this is nuts. Mm-hmm. And I can imagine how accepted that is if at the hospital level, and they all make money. We know because we're both in healthcare in some regard. It's just insane. Let's get back to your recovery facilities. Do you own the building? Do you own the buildings?
I do.
That is incredible. So you created a very good business out of it. It's almost like we could go into the business aspect of it, and I appreciate you sharing how important they are. I do think they're important. As a business, first of all, I'm very proud of you. I don't know if it means whatever to you, but that's really
Thank you.
That's really cool. So you own the buildings. It's almost like I had when we were growing up. My mom was in daycare, so I told you a little bit about my mother, who was an alcoholic. And the reason I'm so against, I do drink, but I don't drink. I'll have like a glass of wine and that's it. But my mother had a daycare, and in daycares, a lot of people, what they do is they buy a house and they open a daycare, then they get people to live there. They'll buy a second house, then they'll get people to work that daycare. It kind of pays off these houses within 15 to 30 years. It's just a really good business model. And I know a lady that has like 12 homes in San Francisco doing that, which is like, so she's a multi-millionaire, right? Yeah. You're thinking 1.5 million each home. She's got this operation. My mother had a daycare, and she got drunk at that daycare facility while the kids were there. And the police busted in the door because she wasn't opening the door. So they found her passed out while these kids are like on the floor crying and all this. It was really brutal. So she lost her daycare and gave it up. I don't know if they could convict her on it or something like that. She did go to jail, I would imagine.
Oh, my goodness.
I wasn't around then, but it was just very tough to see.
Yeah.
But this facility, there's scalability for you in this regard. Is that your business model as a business person? You took something very negative, you turned it into something very positive. What's the business model for opening more facilities, or like, do you not want to expand on it?
I do want to expand. It's funny because now being 10 years in business, people just, how did you do it? Or how do you do it? How do you juggle everything? How do you manage everything? And my mind is just wired differently. I believe most opiate addicts, like our minds are a little bit different. We have that drive and hustle. It's not going to go away. It's not going to stop. I don't think I'll ever retire. I don't look forward to retirement. That scares me. Any idle time makes me nervous. But it's been interesting to see over the years how I have a lot of passion and love for helping people that are struggling. I do. But I also really enjoy the creativity side of business. I really enjoy putting thoughts onto paper and paper into action and action into success. And so it's been pretty fun to see this other side of myself through the journey of the recovery process with the houses, getting the houses, flipping them, remodeling them, and then saying like, oh, I really like this, and then doing it again, and then selling the house. So it's like I really enjoy the real estate side of things as well. So definitely opening up other locations that could help more people is definitely in the cards for my future, as well as just expanding business opportunities and venturing off into other things that are rewarding and different, and that kind of feed that side of my mind.
The creative side.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying that as well.
Good for you. That's incredible. What an incredible story. Would you imagine opening up like more Avila Heights? Because I would imagine that market is probably, although you may deal with some people that are different, but that market is, maybe there's more profit in that market. Maybe it's more likely that someone that has money wants to send their son into rehab. It's easier to obtain that customer, or it doesn't even, or I shouldn't say customer, patient in this case.
Yeah.
What would you say is like your direction? Would you open one in LA and deal with celebrities? Because I see them all the time checking in and checking out, right?
Yeah. It just depends. I mean, there's also so many programs in LA. So
I see.
I like to also, see where it is it's needed, and try to see that demographic, because there are so many programs, more up north, Southern California. So, maybe out of state, Vegas, places that don't have a lot of options for their locals that don't want to get on a plane and travel, which is understandable. And seeing what it is that's needed in that area.
Let's talk a little bit about your employee management. You mentioned a lot of different people. Obviously, you're a businesswoman. How many people are involved in an operation like this? Is it 10, 5, 20? Is it?
We have 2 facilities with 18 beds, and I believe we have about 42 employees.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, so it definitely takes a large team of us to be able to help in different areas to make sure that the operations go smoothly and that we're giving each client the care that they need. It's definitely a challenging area to work in because it sounds appealing to a lot of people, especially nurses who are fresh out of school, and they may have done a little chapter on, mental health. And they're like, ooh, that fascinated me. I liked it. I want to work in it. And then they're 2 weeks in, they're like, I tap out. I walk out. I'm not doing this.
It's not easy to process.
No, it's not. It's very, very, very difficult. It takes a very unique, special individual. And I tell people, even during their interview process, me and my management team do let them know, we won't take it personal if this is not for you. We are used to the turnover, unfortunately, in this field, and that's not just my program. That's majority of programs that are working hands-on with the clients, dealing with, ones that are really having a hard day, really wanting to leave. It's challenging.
Yeah, it's not easy.
No.
Not only are you managing the employees, but it's not for everyone because they don't want to maybe be around an individual who can't handle it. In your facilities at Avila Heights or Bright Future Recovery, has there been times where you felt like, obviously there's success stories, but there's also where you had to say, I wish I had that person back, or like, you know what I mean? Like you felt emotionally attached to a recovery.
All the time. Yeah. And I tell people who are working in this, you have to have heart for this. It's not a business. I think I know a lot of people have called me who are business owners that say, hey, can you help me open up one of these facilities? And it's like, the reason that most are successful, what I call mom and pop facilities, are because most of the owners have gone through the process or have a family member who's been through the process, and they know the personal heartache that it's taken on you.
The emotional toll.
For sure. And it's one of those things where we've treated thousands of clients through our facilities, and I will still walk into the office and feel the emotion and the hurt that they're going through, or their parents, and cry with them. It's hard not to. It's, and the second that you get jaded and it's just a job and your heart's not in it, I tell people it's probably time to find a new career.
Yeah. This is not for you.
Right.
And I could see why, because you're dealing with all ages, and also people that have been maybe even not only the parents' side or the family side, but individuals that their mind has been altered a bit.
Right. Oh, completely.
You know what I mean?
Or ones that we've treated and we're just like, gosh, we really want to see this one get through it. I see the potential. I know they're capable, and then they don't make it.
Why do you think they go back? Or what's one leading cause? Let's say they even go through your facility and a month they're into it smooth, or whatever the scenario. Why are they coming back to it?
Just depends. I mean, some may have not given it enough time the first go around or the second go around. Or a lot of times we see it where they're so stubborn and their families can't force them, or families are just letting them come back home. Well, I'm picking them up. They don't want to stay. And it's like, no, they need this. They need this. And families are doing all that they can to the best of their ability. And I get it. It's so difficult, but sometimes the individual's not putting enough time through the process to have that long-term success, or taking all the necessary steps to get through it.
Let's talk about, for the families out there, what can, you're a parent as well, correct?
Yes.
How many kids do you have?
3.
3 kids, congratulations, same. So as a parent, you mentioned educate the kids on drugs, show them what 6th Street looks like in San Francisco, say, hey, you don't want to be here, whatever. Well, what can you do, or what can parents do to prevent this from happening?
Well, I don't know that we can ever prevent it from happening. I think that we could always just be aware, learn the signs and symptoms of drug use, and stay in tune with that. If your kid's isolating, if your kid is coming home with red eyes, or, dilated pupils, or pinpoint pupils, being able to recognize what that might mean, and being in tune with that, as well as educate our children, talk to them about it. I know it's an uncomfortable topic, and the question we get a lot is, well, what age is appropriate?
That's what I was going to ask.
And that's hard to say, because not all 8-year-olds are the same. I know that my daughter is very advanced for being 4 years old from what my boys were at 4 years old. So she might be able to take a conversation a little bit younger in certain areas than the boys would have been. So just staying in tune with the maturity of your child to know. And if they're asking questions, answer them. Because if they're asking the question, they're becoming curious. And if they don't feel comfortable talking to us about it, I can guarantee they're going to school and asking their friends about it. And they may not be getting the right answer from a friend as they would be getting from their parent.
Do you think schools are doing enough to educate the kids on
Definitely
don't
not.
do this?
No.
Completely not. Right?
Not at all.
Like they're so into the cloud of what they're teaching
Completely.
nowadays.
I'm sorry, but why are we still having a whole quarter or semester on pregnancy and sex ed? And I get it. We have to still talk about that as well. But we are seeing way more overdoses in high school than we are teen pregnancies.
I think sex should be out of the curriculum, period.
I mean, we just need to have to be talking about what's really happening nowadays a lot more, because it's getting really, really bad.
I think drugs, crime, and finance, like taxes.
Yes.
These are topics that really should be taught in school. Because
Absolutely.
as I graduated and moved on, I was like, I didn't learn anything. And
Totally.
Earlier you asked me before we started filming, like, why did I do this podcast? And so I learned so much off YouTube. I probably learned more off YouTube than I did in school, because I was not focused, not paying attention. But then nowadays you also mentioned that you could find these resources of problems or people that have gone through something and see their experience and correlate it to yours, or even preventive. Is that why you started the Hope to Hustle podcast? Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, I started it for a few reasons. And I was torn of, do I do a podcast all on recovery, or do I open the mic to more than just that? And which is why it's Hope to Hustles. I know a lot of people with so many different backgrounds, and not all that are in recovery from addiction, but have a very unique story. I mean, I'm sure if we sit here and turned the questions on to you, I'd learn so much.
Are you
right?
inviting me on your podcast?
I think that's next.
Okay.
I think we got to do that. Well, because so many people, and I know people say this all the time, but I feel like it's important to really hear from the individual. So many people may look at your car, your house, what you have, and think, gosh, they're just so lucky. And it's like, I'm so tired of hearing that because they have no idea. And I know you can attest, as well as every other successful business owner out there who's doing well, is there is a lot of hard work and tears and conversations with attorneys and lawyers. And, there's just
I can attest.
We all can, right? There's so much. I mean, when you have 6 different attorneys for different areas of your company, at first I was like, that's scary. And they're like, that's when you're doing something right.
Yeah.
So we got to be able to talk about it, or, having the media is huge now. And they'll go out and put this fake story out about you, and you can't defend yourself because now you have to wait for your attorney to advise what you should say.
And then that takes time.
And that takes time. And sometimes you don't ever get that opportunity to talk about it.
Yep.
So I felt having a podcast was a great opportunity to be able to share the struggles that come with success, talk about the different seasons and levels of hope that somebody has had to hold on to and get through their hustle and be successful of what they're doing and where they're at, whether that's through overcoming, illness or addiction, or starting a business, failing with a business, starting again, trying again, all of those things.
I definitely think you have a very unique story. I mean, to have what you have, to invest in real estate on the side from it, to have that many employees, and to really go from rock bottom and climb your way up to it, and help people out, make money or make a lifestyle or a living doing it. It's a great thing. And as you mentioned, I think it's not for everyone. I don't think someone like you probably get people that do see you on Instagram, or people that do see you drive a nice car, let's say, or I don't know your car. I didn't see what you pulled up in, and I do love cars, but you know what I mean? It's like they see it and they think, oh, this is all easy, or you got lucky. And that's not the case with business. It's like it's a grind, and there are ups and downs. And you mentioned something earlier. It's like, even though you're having these ups and downs, and your kid might be having a cold or a flu, and you didn't get sleep last night, and you still got to be on for your meeting, for your board meeting, for your families that are complaining, a lawsuit, whatever it might be. That's not the fun part that people show, and that's cool that
right.
you have a podcast where you're like, wait a minute, guys, let's back up. This is what really the grind is. This is this isn't black and white. There's so many colors in between.
Yep.
So that's awesome. How often do you do your podcast? Is it once a week?
We air once a week and record once a week.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love it. And I think I think you have a story to tell, and I would just go that direction. Turning your life around and really becoming a businesswoman that's making change in her community and changing people's lives. You're not going to get to everybody. Mm-hmm. In business, I know not every client's going to be always happy. And even in my businesses, and I've been on, my last job was like Best Buy, and when I was like in my early 20s or maybe even before, that was the last job. So, and I'm old. And not every client's going to be happy. I've been told to clients where, hey, I can't help you. You're just, whatever I do, you're not going to love it. So just get it done elsewhere or whatever.
Right.
What that journey of being a businesswoman and a successful person, to whatever measurement that is to each individual, what has that given to you? Like the hustle side of you, how has that made your life better?
It's challenged me in a lot of ways to be able to just come up with a solution. And if that solution means that I need to take a day off, I take a day off. If that solution means that I need to go to a personal retreat for a few days, then that's what I need to do.
You do it.
I do it. I barely started doing that and committing myself to that at least once a year, 3 years ago.
Wow. How long are these retreats?
The most I've done was 5 days.
That's awesome. Where do you go?
I've done on-site, which is a trauma retreat, living-centered program. So for a lot of business owners, a lot of people who are going just through different life obstacles, it was a phenomenal program. And that was a full-on unplugged, turn your cell phone in for 5 days. Yeah. So
That's cool.
some of my clients are like, I'm an alcoholic and I'm drinking 3 bottles of wine, but I can't come in because I have a business to run. I'm like, I don't even want to hear it because so do I, and I've done it. You come first.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done, spa ones, just whatever it is, because I was getting burnt out. I mean, I think we could all say, and you don't really know what burnt out is until you start experiencing it, where it's like now you're going kind of crazy a little bit. But it's taught me to get wise at a really young age, where the little things don't faze me anymore. I used to care so much what people would think. I'm like, I don't care now. Like the level of BS that I deal with at the age that I am, I don't have time for somebody else's petty little comments or...
Do you want to share how old you are?
I'm 34.
34. So you were at 24.
24. I started my company.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, and when I'm dealing with big stuff and sitting in rooms of with attorneys and this, that, and the other for what I call big girl problems, I've learned to leave the high school BS drama and little talking behind me because, I mean, I was young when I started my company, so those things at first used to hurt. I'd be like, oh my gosh, why do they feel that way? Or why are they saying this? Now I'm just like...
You passed the jealousy where you're
I have completely passed it up where I sincerely just it doesn't faze me anymore. Where if you interviewed me 2 years ago, I'd probably still be crying about it, It would
affect you.
Yeah.
It is draining, and you're also dealing with such high emotions that I could see why you need to get away. It's very important.
Right.
Jealousy, do you still, on a daily basis, or... energy, you feel people's energies and so forth. I bet you deal with that.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
All
At
the time.
34, to turn her life around like you have and be this business person, people are against you mentally or physically or like in this spirituality world.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you feel it or no?
I totally feel it. And to me, it's like, I mean, and I get it. But I don't really have envy towards people who do well. I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
I'm inspired. Mm-hmm. So when people look at me and they're envious for one reason or
They're
another,
not doers.
they're not doers. Yeah. They're expecting. Yeah. They're wanting something without having to put the work in for it. Where me, if I see somebody who's on another level, I'm like, can I sit in a room with you and pick your brain, please? Because I want to know what you did to get there. Yeah. Teach me, and I'll pull out my notepad. That's where my mind goes. And I'll look at that person and think like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're doing that now. I'm like, heck yeah.
Have you ever considered joining like an entrepreneur's, an entrepreneur's program like EO? I think it's EO or there's another one, I forgot the name, but there's a lot of them out there where it's just business people like yourself. They do meetings, retreats, getaways.
That has definitely been a goal of mine this year, for sure. So
they do mentorships on there as well, too.
That is definitely something I'm interested in because I love collaborating with other business owners who are, making multiple figures.
Dealing with the problems you're dealing with.
Yeah. And those conversations are a little different. And I feel like it's sometimes challenging because you feel a little alone when you've started something so unique at such a young age that it could be a little lonely of who do you turn to, who do you trust. But I definitely feel at home and in my comfort zone when I'm sitting around a table with like-minded people who are going through the same thing, who have the same goals. So absolutely, if you have any of those suggestions, I'd love to look into them.
I've looked at them before. I personally didn't join. I didn't have the time with everything that was going on, but that's an excuse as well, right? But I'll send them to you. I think you'd be great for it, or it might be captivating to you.
Yeah.
What are some of the most valuable lessons you've learned as you have this incredible decade journey from bottom to I wouldn't say the top. I think you're going to keep evolving, right? So
there's never top, right? You always keep going.
It's good.
Keep going. There's always more to obtain. Yep. Yeah, there's always more to do, especially in this field. There's always more we can do. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
What was the most valuable lessons you've learned during that decade journey of
Yeah.
you going through it?
Patience and don't take things personal. Those are the two things. I definitely feel I'm guilty of being snappy or short fused or burnt out and taking that out on, either my loved ones or my peers or colleagues. And I'm huge on making amends. So I learned that early on in my recovery process through my program is taking full responsibility of your own actions and making amends, even if it's uncomfortable. And
You matured.
There's been times where I'm like, gosh, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have said it like that. And now I feel really bad and what an idiot. Oh my God. And I simply pick up the phone and say, hey, I know it's been a couple of years, but I just wanted to sincerely apologize for the way that we last had our conversation. It was not appropriate of me or mature of me, and I want to apologize and hope you could accept that apology. And I have no problem doing that.
That's incredible. It shows maturity, and you probably get this thing off your chest or your shoulders where you're like, hey.
And they may not, forgive me. And I'm used to that too. I mean, I have people who look at me and still look at me as that addict. I'm like, get over it. Oh my God. Like, how are you judging me from 12 years ago? They don't bring it up, but they won't even say hi to me in a grocery store. And I'm like,
where do you live? Is it a
very small town?
Okay.
Yeah. Part of the problem.
Yeah.
I've had a hard time.
Do you still live there?
For now, but we definitely will be moving. Yeah.
Are you married or?
Yes.
You are. Okay.
Yeah.
And where are you looking to move to? What's a dream?
We will be moving to San Luis Obispo.
Oh, it's a nice area.
Yeah. So we'll be moving there hopefully within the next 2 years.
Good for you. That's the goal. All right.
Yes.
So far, what are you most proud of achieving with everything that you've done? I know I could see your mind you're like, hey, I got so much more to go. But, and the patience you mentioned, that's a big one for business. But
I'm really proud of creating a healthy foundation for my children.
Okay.
I really feel like my kids are set, they come home to a healthy, happy, loving, stable home.
That's wonderful.
And I feel I work really hard for them. And my son is 10, but he's been working summer jobs at my facility since he was 7.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he makes his money and we're trying, like you said,
That's
right?
a good payroll deduction.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like you said, right? We didn't learn that in school. It's like taxes. So I'm trying to teach him. I don't want any of my kids to grow up and think I can't wait to get a Mercedes for my first car. Absolutely not. Whatever you can afford for your first car is going to determine.
I'm putting my kids to work. I'm talking to my wife today. The two of them need to start earning some money.
They need to start working.
The way we reward the kids is typically if they want something, I'll have them read. That's 5 books or 10 books.
How old are your kids?
8, 7, and
oh yeah, so they're little too.
Yeah, they're youngins. So I'll have them read, but now they need to start sweeping stuff. You know what I mean? I agree with you.
Organizing, UA drug tests. That's what my son is like.
Paying the bills.
Right. Start paying rent.
That's cool. So I'm glad you have that. What keeps you motivated to keep going? You mentioned the dream house maybe or improving your family situation. What's motivating for you? What's motivating for you just to continue this path and forget all maybe the hardship or the negative side of what your business may bring? Because I'm sure in your business there's a lot you deal with.
Well, one, I know that there's many, many more lives that need to be saved. So when it comes to the mental health, substance abuse field, to continue pushing is to really help those that need the help and the assistance. Business-wise, that side of my mind, I don't think will ever turn off. I think people need to worry if I'm not doing something next. That's when it's check on me. Are you okay, Cheree? Why have you gone silent?
Yeah,
why are you not working on a project?
Where are you now?
Yeah.
Where's your cell phone?
I'm in my comfort zone and at my happiest place when I'm creating and I'm doing and I'm all over the place. That's just what I personally need for myself.
Understood. To keep going. If you could be anywhere in the world today, let's say any vacation, where would you pick? What destination?
Oof. That's a hard one because it's either Disneyland or
For you?
Yosemite. For me, I
Oh, wow,
love
really?
Disneyland. I know oh gosh, you're like
I'm
my
like,
husband.
that's
Disneyland,
like
please.
too
No,
many
that's
people.
like that's my husband. He's like that. If you were to say the last place, he
Yeah.
would say Disneyland, and I would pick it as my first place. There are
Yosemite, huh?
Yeah,
That's peaceful there.
it is.
Do you go to there or Tahoe a lot with the kids or?
Yeah, so we have a cabin in Yosemite, and we just got a cabin in Bass Lake.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I grew up there. It's a very sentimental place for me to go and unwind. And
How does that feel? Because like, is that like once you're there, you're at peace kind of feeling or what?
I am, and I still am working, but I like to switch up the environments.
Okay.
So I never stop working, but it's nice to kind of switch it up. Tomorrow we're going to Tahoe, actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah, for a
Congrats.
few days. So it's I do a lot of stuff with the kids, which
Do you
is
ski?
fun. Snowboard.
Snowboard.
Yeah.
Okay, I switched to skiing. What does your husband do? Just curious.
He is a business owner as well.
Okay.
He works in the manufacturing field, so he has a shop with like CNC mill machines and
That's interesting.
Yeah,
he may know my welding business then.
possibly.
Yeah, because it involves CNC and
Yes.
plasma cutters and
Yep,
stuff.
that's what
so
he does.
really, really interesting. Cool. So he understands your mindset for business because two business owners know it's not like one's at home going, "Hey, I really need you here."
He's definitely the calmer one.
Okay.
For sure.
Got
I
it.
mean, I look at his business as him and his machines.
Yeah.
And doesn't consist of having to talk a lot. It's just programming and working with his machines. And I'm like, I would go haywire in here. I
it's
cannot
not
even do this. I have to be talking for him, my field of talking on the phone all day. He's like, how do you do it?
That is awesome. Good for you both. And then final question as we wrap up here, and truly appreciate you sharing your story. I think it's been great. And I asked this to some guests, if you could go back in time, either change a thing or give advice to your young self, and you're young now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
What would that be, or what would you change, or nothing?
It's hard because I feel like everything that I've gone through in my life has molded me to who I am today. So I know that most would look and have a lot of regret and be like, well, tell yourself never to do drugs, But I feel like I went through the process and God got me through the process and helped me out of it because there were so many more people that needed my assistance. So I just feel I don't really regret my journey. I've healed through it. And for that, I'm thankful.
And it made you who you are today.
Totally.
What piece of advice would you give to yourself? Like, whether it's, what could you think of? Like, if you could take your young self and say, hey, it's just going to take longer or whatever,
Yeah. Trust the process and have faith.
Faith.
Yeah.
And are you very religious? Do you
I am.
find that it helps a lot with recovery? And
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, Cheree Ashley, I appreciate you coming on. Guys, there you have it. She is not only a recovering addict from the past, but someone that's completely turned her life around, has made other people's lives better, and continues to expand on her business. Beautiful family, 3 kids. She's going to Tahoe soon, which I'm jealous of, which we were supposed to go to, and has her own podcast, which you guys got to check out, Hope to Hustle. Owner of Bright Future Recovery and Avila Houses, is that correct?
Avila Heights.
Avila Heights, excuse me.
Or
I apologize.
Avila. They can go both
I'm
ways.
so bad. Yeah, I'm so bad at that.
I hear locals call it Avila Avila. It's like tomato,
And we'll link them below. And if you ever need any advice, if you're a parent watching or if you're someone in the area that wants to recover, I'm sure they could reach out to you and you could point them in the right direction. And
Absolutely.
We'll link your Instagram as well. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been great. I learned a lot. And I truly appreciate it. If you ever need anything, do let me know. And thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Appreciate you.
It's been great.